I said, well, who's going to have the most words tonight? Thank you. I'd like to, are we live on the TV?
We are recording.
Okay. I'd like to welcome everyone to tonight's emergency board meeting. It is August 20th, Thursday, August 20th, 2020. Will you all please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The only thing on our agenda tonight is the reopening plan. We weren't able to finish it at our last meeting. We ran out of time. So we had this special meeting to continue the discussion and hopefully reach a decision from the board tonight. So I guess we are going to have some comment allowed from the online forum. We're going to take that a little bit later. We're going to have some brief discussion from the board at first, and then anybody that has any questions that during this meeting and it puts it in the chat,
Right.
we will basically respond to those.
Our moderator will be watching the chat, so if you have questions or comments that come up during the course of the
Right.
board's discussion, please record those there.
Right.
And then throughout, we'll stop and take those.
Right. So at this point, I'll open it up to the board as far as discussion regarding the opening plan. We did go through some details on it last week. I'll start off with at least one question when I reviewed it again today, Ruth Ellen. One thing I noticed in the remote model, it said that we would be doing online, formal live instruction at all levels at least 4 days per week. Assigned teachers help session. Why wouldn't that be 5 days a week?
For most, it will be 5 days a week. And that was an earlier piece of that. We are looking at 5 days a week now with the model that's there. It's not, initially we had looked at some of it, not every class may meet 5 days a week, but there will be online instruction for all students 5 days a week. Some classes may meet, say, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Tuesday, Thursday.
Okay.
Yep.
Is that any different than our live session?
It's different than our typical live session schedule right now. If we are looking at, because we would be parsing things out so that we have both office hours times for one-to-one and the regular live instruction. So yes, it is different.
Go ahead, Tim.
So, I've got a child in the school system. As a parent, if I have concerns, what's different now than if we were in live session and me contacting a teacher, staff member, superintendent? Why do we need those office hours and taking that time away from the kids?
The office hours aren't all for parent communication. A lot of that may be for one-to-one communication with students, for time for teachers to be available outside of just the group.
The office hours aren't just for parent communication.
Who's that?
I'm not sure. I think someone had their mic open in it.
Go ahead. Ruth Ellen, I guess I didn't hear the last thing.
Mr. King, there's quite a few comments about audio.
Okay, where it's not loud enough?
I've seen 3 different comments now saying people can't hear.
Okay, so everyone please speak up as best they can. So could you repeat your last comment, Ruth Ellen? I kind of got distracted from the...
Yes, it is different. We are looking at time for those office hours. It's not just family communication. Part of that will also be more like office hours at the college level, where it's teachers available for students to come in for extra help, for one-to-one, for small group sessions. It's not just time that isn't instruction, but it's not the full group instruction. It may be time that is used for family communication, but a good chunk of that we are looking at is for that one-to-one piece that you're talking about.
Okay, so along that lines, if I'm a child and I'm in the school and we're in the building, is there time during the day allotted to one-to-one instruction, or where does that occur?
Primarily during the day, that one-to-one instruction would occur during advisory, if that's the time that a student has signed up to go see a teacher for that. For students who have IEPs, it may also be built into their day for separate one-to-one instruction.
So instead of cutting the hours of the day within that daytime schedule, why don't we have advisory scheduled if that's a normal? I guess where I'm getting with is, why does remote have to look different than our regular school day?
Because we're looking at a couple of things. One, pedagogically, that we're not looking to have kids online the full day. Number two, we're looking at the fact that your groupings may need to be very different. You may need to have different latitudes as far as who's able to get on when. We will likely have some siblings who are sharing devices, at least to start the school year, because of our supplies not getting here as quickly as we had anticipated, and that's a national issue. That's not just here. And so that's why we're looking at it being different. It's not the same learning environment. And I know that you're looking at it being as exactly the same as within the school's building. Online learning doesn't frequently look the same. VLAX classes don't run like a full school day.
What I'm trying to balance isn't that I'm looking at a comparison between online learning and in school, saying they're the same. I'm trying to look at what are our children being deprived at by going 6-week remote learning. So that's what I'm trying to get through my head. What education are we taking away from these kids by going remote for 6 weeks? We've already been remote for a significant amount of time. I read an email today from a student that said, I'm a National Honor Society student, and I had a hard time with remote. I'm trying to get in our mind how we pick up that slack and don't do any more damage.
And what we had in the spring did not have the same times built in for specific one-to-one time, for specific, here's when you can get a hold of these teachers. It was very loose. There was not daily contact because we were trying to accommodate people's schedules that were completely turned upside down. We are looking at much more structure with this, and I think you're going to find it's much more effective.
So I guess I have a question in that 15 days ago when we had cases in town, we made the decision to go fully remote with limited exceptions. We now have 0 cases in town. What are we lacking that we're not ready for to go full in school with safety restrictions?
I do not have barriers in district yet. I need to get the...
So how long will that take?
If I can order them tomorrow, probably the first part of September. We still have some other pieces that need to be cut. If I don't get them ordered tomorrow, it's going to be longer. I need board approval for that tonight.
Okay, so the barriers aren't necessarily in the state education system, correct? So in other words, where I'm going is, I read the plan pretty in depth today, and that the plan says up to the point of masks are discretionary to the district. Now, I would not recommend to anybody that we don't wear masks, so don't take this out of context, but what's the requirement that says we have to have these plexiglass shields? What protection is that providing that the masks aren't providing?
We aren't going to be able to maintain 6 feet in all classrooms by any stretch because of the sizes of our rooms. And so looking at adding the barriers with the masks, because we can't maintain 6 feet, it adds an additional layer of protection.
Okay. And if we order these tomorrow, they can be in first part of September? So what day?
I was told end of the month at the beginning of this week. It's
Yeah.
now Thursday, so I'm hoping that's still the case.
So we open September 9th? So
But
we
there's
could-
also a holiday weekend in there, so.
Okay. So we've got, if we order the barriers tomorrow, we've got 9 days that they're in the building that we can install the barriers. What is object number 2 that's prohibiting us from opening up remote with restriction?
Remote with restriction or in person?
I'm sorry, in school with restriction. I misspoke.
I would say our second barrier right now is our staffing. I'm in the process of getting final numbers in from staff. I have probably about 25% right now who are asking for some type of accommodation, either because of their own health, the health of a family member, or because of childcare issues.
So we'll never be able to open up for the school year other than remote if we don't have staff. Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
It depends upon what the board decides they're going to allow staff to do. If staff are allowed to remote in, I may be able to do some combinations and still be able to have that instruction delivered. I'm going to have to work out the schedule. If the only accommodation that is given to staff is that whatever they're allowed under ADA or FMLA or the Family Leave Act or the Family First Act, then I'm looking at not only paying people to be on leave who don't feel they can be in, but looking to possibly replace a quarter of my staff.
But those numbers aren't final, and I don't even know if those numbers are what you've been showing us to date. I think-
The numbers, right now I have, I'll give you what I've got as of this afternoon that are confirmed with requests.
I requested the paperwork and the application process for this, and I haven't seen it at the board. We have an FMLA process. We have a different process under federal law. In order to do that, it requires policy. The board is the policy-setting board. Why haven't we seen that documentation?
I will get that to you.
For me, I don't think that discussion is relevant to this reopening plan. I know it's relative reopening, but as far as the plan, what this board is going to decide regarding accommodations, I think is a separate discussion. So I really don't want to weigh down this discussion because that falls into other things that are more personnel related. And, I don't know if we've got enough, the information is complete enough to feel comfortable with a sound decision. Maybe you've got enough, all those correspondences back.
I don't have everything back, no.
Okay.
I can give you numbers of what I do have, but I don't have enough.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's important discussion, but I don't want to drag down our discussion on this reopening plan with that, because we could get sideways pretty easy. I guess that brings up a couple questions that I know I asked you last night, Ruth Ellen, regarding the computers, and based upon the order that we placed, did you get any feedback from them when and if we could get a partial of that order?
We're still looking to see, we may be able to get a partial. We have also found another vendor that might be able to get us a small number, and I'm thinking maybe 20 or so. Right now, we have sufficient to cover grades K1 as it stands. If I have additional kindergarten enrollments, we're going to have to look at that. I have 7 through 12 covered, and so far the requests that I've had for additional devices for grades 2 through 6, we can cover.
So how many do you feel we need in a stopgap? We need
In a
30,
stopgap,
50?
probably between 30 and 50 will put us in a good
Okay.
place.
Is the current vendor that we've got a PO going to let us out of that quantity if we can find a replacement? I mean, I guess that's what we have to ask the question.
We can certainly
Are we going to get a partial that's going to satisfy what we need? If not, are we able to reduce our order if we can backfill it from another vendor? And do we have another vendor that is price competitive? Or do we need to authorize additional expenditures for the difference, if any, to purchase those?
I would say at this point, there's probably going to be an additional expenditure. And what I don't know is if I can get a similar warranty.
Okay, but that, I realize that. You know, looking that I did, you may not be able to find the exact warranty. You may be able to find something that's 2/3 of the way there, apparent, from what I've seen. I also did see some vendors that may have some 20 here, 20 there. So for me, I think we need to address this, and we basically got to start with the vendor. Are we going to be able to get these in time, a minimum? If not, are we able to reduce our order by that amount? And make sure you get that in writing. And then, if we can backfill from other vendors, the 20 to 50, you know, so if there's 50 units, and it's 50 times $50 additional is $2,500. So the additional should be well under a $5,000 limit. So, I mean, I think the board should, as part of discussion, consider authorizing you for that additional expenditure to backfill that hardware. But the first two steps are going to take place as far as the vendor. Because the last thing we want to do is buy 30 other additional units, and then they say, well, you got to take them because you ordered them.
Right.
But I don't think that's the case
I
because
don't
of
think
demand.
that's probably the case. I think there are people more than willing to pick up what we let go of.
But first of all, it's
I wanna
like,
make sure
what
that
can
we
we
can get
get,
that
and when
money.
is that partial coming in?
Yeah.
The other thing that you brought up is the barriers. I know I've had some discussions with you, and Larry's been involved in this. I think that's important. It's got to get resolved this week. And just like I said on Monday, it's something that's got to get resolved this week for us to have,
In the MOA, there's a specific line about your barriers.
But that's not the opening plan.
Mr. King,
go ahead, Joel.
I'm a little confused about the barriers. When we voted on August 5th to open remotely with a 4-week check-in, a 6-week cap with a 4-week check-in, it's my understanding that check-in was to basically assess whether or not we were ready with some of these precautionary measures. I don't understand why they haven't been ordered. Why weren't they ordered on August 6th?
Well,
Did I miss a conversation?
no, I mean, I've been, Ruth Ellen has forwarded me a bunch of the different proposals. As far as looking at stuff that's either it's going to work for us, it's in the price competitive range. I mean, prices have been anywhere from $13 to $70 that I've seen. We think the target funding was based upon 25 or 30. I think they found a vendor that's basically going to be under that. And I think the lead time is before September 9th, and certainly under the 4 weeks. But it hasn't happened yet, Joe. And like I said, there's a lot of people scrambling for the same stuff. So, you know, she's definitely been working on it. I can speak to that. But a decision hadn't been made, and that's why I said to Ruth Ellen earlier this week, it's got to get done this week. The barriers, so we're not going to be done come September 9th. There was some time in the wiggle room, and that's basically used up by shopping around, trying to find the best deal or the best fit.
Can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
Why are we going to need to spend money on barriers if 25% of our staff isn't coming back? We'll never open.
That is yet to be seen, because that is going to be based upon what we set for policy and what people feel they need for accommodations, and how teachers feel comfortable with the infection rate, their own health, their own personal situation. Some of these variables we can't control. So when it gets to that point and decisions are made, and we have whatever that number is, and then how are we going to deal with that? Are we going to be able to deal with it by moving people around, temporary staffing? I mean, that decision's not before us. It may be that point. I doubt it will be. That is my feeling, but I could be wrong. Go ahead.
I got an email last night that I thought was interesting. And it was an email to parents on a survey asking who needed computers and who needed Wi-Fi spots. So the email obviously went over to the internet asking who needs internet access. A, have we gotten any data back from that survey? And B, if you don't have internet and you need a hotspot, how are you going to respond to that survey?
The majority of parents have been able to access via phone. I do have paper surveys that are also going out. I've received several responses, including those who need a device for students, but do have access to email. And having a device for a student to be able to do schoolwork is not the same as having a phone to grab an email or respond to a quick survey.
Do we have any families that could be left out by that correspondence or reaching out? I mean, is there a way that we're able to check that? That somebody actually has access or is receiving this? How do we attest that people are receiving this request 100%?
I will go back and make sure that we get everything sent out via phone as well.
Right.
And then
I mean, we
I
check.
can send by mail as well.
Yeah, well, it's just like how we, what is the return date required?
Pickups are next week for most student devices, although we will.
No, I was
continue-
referring to the survey.
Well,
Okay.
before pickups.
Okay.
And so, but certainly, we'll continue to work with people up to the point that school opens as well. So we're looking to get the majority of devices out before the holiday weekend. And actually before staff returns to campus, because the majority of their time will be spent in professional development.
But that's 4 weeks away.
No, staff reports on the 31st.
No, but
of
as far as, say, yeah, but 31st, today's
20th.
the
the
20th.
20th.
So.
So I have 1
as-
week.
Yeah, 1 week.
1 week to get devices out, and I have staff the following Monday.
So when we went remote in March, we ordered X amount of,
And not all of those are in yet either.
okay.
That was 50?
So can we say tonight that every student that needs a device for internet service is going to have one?
We're in the process of looking at other vendors to try to make sure that happens. Right now, the requests that I have, we can fulfill, but we know that we're going to be tight. We are looking to see what else we can get.
So the answer is we don't know.
The answer is, I can't tell you with an absolute certainty everybody will have one. I can tell you that families who need them at this point are covered, and we're still looking to get additional devices.
If we have a meeting next Monday, which we're probably going to need to, are we going to have those answers regarding the computers and the barriers for that meeting?
If there's any way that I can get it, yes, you will. I will be on the phone starting first thing in the morning.
Because these things are important for us to get.
Absolutely.
In either scenario, I mean, the barriers, we got more time to use before they start being used.
Doing it.
Yeah.
Yes.
And at the next meeting, I'm sure we'll be discussing staffing, some of these other things that are before as far as impact negotiations, and the next step. I'll share one of Tim's points. I mean, in the last few weeks, I've been starting to daily go to the state website to try to get stay on top of their reporting, and it is very good. I don't know if we've been 15 days since the last case. I don't know, you mentioned 15
Not
days.
quite,
I don't think,
almost.
yeah. But, there's no infections in this town, Middleton, I mean, basically all the towns north of us. There's 1 to 4 cases in Rochester, I think 1 to 4 in Barrington. So it's been very good the last few weeks, and I'm going to look at it on a daily basis to make sure that I understand what's going on around us. So when we get to that period of making a decision, because my opinion is, I mean, I have concerns with the next potential phase, and if at all I feel comfortable, I would like to go to a full open with restrictions when we get to that next point. Because the phased opening, to me, has logistical issues that I think are going to subtract from education. And if we're down on staff, that could compound it. But that's just discussion, because I think in the proposed plan and what we set for milestones 4 weeks out, we have the ability to make a decision at that point to where the board feels comfortable. Any other discussion from the other board members regarding the proposed plan? I'd like to get through a basic discussion and then open it up to any questions or comments from people who are watching the meeting. Joel? Any thoughts on the proposed plan?
Not at this time.
Stan?
No, I think the plan is fine. We already know what we're going to do, so we should just move ahead with it.
Josh?
I'm in favor of full reopening.
Tim, you had something?
I do. On the 5th of the month, today's the 20th, I voted to go full remote. I voted to go full remote because I didn't think we were ready. On the 20th, I don't think we're ready for full remote. And I really think we need to look at, if we come back with 0 cases in the community, are we more ready to come back remote, or are we more ready to come back in person with restriction? I think we need to have that conversation. If the barriers are going to be coming in September 1st, what's going to stop us from opening? Whereas we don't know, we don't have a hard number tonight when we're discussing a reopening plan. We don't have a hard number, and I'm not putting direction on you, Superintendent, but the unknowns tonight are, we don't know how many modems we need. We don't know whether we'll be able to get those.
I will say that the modems, right now, the requests that I have are far fewer than what I currently have available. The modems I'm not concerned about.
In a survey that went out at 8 o'clock last night, I'm just going to add to that, because I talked to a parent today who doesn't have a cell phone, doesn't have internet, and these are the people, and I like your phone call because I'm hoping that works, but these are the people that we need to reach so we don't fail. I don't want to see this board, I don't want to see you go into a remote situation and we fail. And I think that's the direction that we're headed by continuing down remote. And I think we need to relook at that and discuss, is remote the way we need to go, or do we come back in person with restrictions? And if so, between now and opening a school, what do we need to do?
Tony, you want to speak to that, or what your thoughts are, what Tim said?
I mean, certainly having everything in place, as far as the barriers and the other materials that we need to have in. I would like to be optimistic and say that we'll have everything by that date. I think it's very optimistic because it sounds like it's a long time from now, but it isn't.
So I'll ask a question the other way. Barring the computers, the barriers, or any staffing concerns, which one are we more prepared to do at this point? If we had the computers, we had the barriers, staffing was adequate, which one are we more prepared to start with?
Certainly in person is what staff is more accustomed to doing. I don't know that we have all families who are now prepared to turn around and do we're in. Because we had announced on the 5th that we were remote for 6 weeks. And so that leaves parents changing schedule, changing again.
I mean, that is one of my concerns. I hear Tim's opinion, but we made a decision earlier, and it's easy to sit here today and say, well, maybe we could have been ready. We could be ready. But I think at that point, when we made that decision, there was a few cases in town, and since then, it's been good, 0 cases, so it seems like. And then at that time, we weren't in the clear, so we made an indication to the parents and the students and the teachers that this is how we're proceeding, and at 4 weeks, we're going to say, in 2 weeks, we're going to change or not change. So for me, I feel we should stick with that, but at this point, if no one has any additional comments, I'd like to open it up to any questions that were presented on the forum. So Misty, if you've got any, let us know.
There aren't any questions in the chat at the moment.
Okay, then, we will open it up to any people who are here, because we have a couple people in attendance.
If you would come up to the mic so that we can. And I'm going to just. You are live.
Okay.
You're gonna need to yell because this is picking you up, plus
Right.
the mic goes to YouTube. So I'm
Okay.
gonna scoot over.
A few minutes ago, you were talking about the plexiglass. I'm assuming that the MOA has been approved by both parties?
No,
It can't be until this reopening plan is settled.
Okay.
That
My
falls-
91A request was denied because it was not approved by both parties.
Yeah.
One party being the school board and the other party being the collective bargaining units. Am I correct?
Correct.
All right.
let me
How
get-
did it hit Facebook tonight?
Well, that's not part of my, it's not from me. But I'll give you what the current status is.
Okay.
We were issued MOA by 2 of the bargaining committees. And we have had counsel with it, and we have not responded to them, and we have not, it's done any impact negotiations with them regarding that. So at this point, we have not sat down with them due to this and just a timeline, but we plan to do very shortly in impact negotiations to discuss their concerns and their request in that MOA. And at this point, because it does fall under negotiations, I don't know how much more I can't really dive into the details, but
Somebody can.
We did not release it.
Okay. Let me clarify what I was going to say about the plexiglass. Under Category 2, Safety Equipment and Supplies, the district shall provide plexiglass work shields and/or face shields. So, if one of the demands that's come forward on your MOA is and either or, is it possible to acknowledge their request and go with face shields only? Or is it the district, is it the board and the admin team and somebody else saying, no, we need the plexiglass? You have a very distinct, a very organized MOA, I'll get to that in a minute, that says provide plexiglass work shields and/or face shields. Do you
That
need?
would mean that in addition to masks, we would have every student wearing a face shield. That may be more than we can ask.
Okay.
Yeah,
So the document that we're being asked to look at that got out into the public,
yep,
the MOA is part of a collective bargaining negotiation and remains confidential until after the board and the employees approve an agreement. That agreement is subject to disclosure under right to know law. Anything before that is not. I guess my question going here is, now that it's out there, I understand that the board did not put it out there. It shouldn't be out there, according to your own attorney. And I wonder if anything involved in it now has just gone right out the window.
as far as,
It's two parties, collective bargaining agreements,
that,
your unions and your board.
that is still going to take place. Whether or not somebody made the MOA public or not, and whether or not it shouldn't be released, or it should be released under 91A, or it shouldn't be released under 91A, depending on your opinion on the argument, the fact still remains, the request has come forward, and we're going to negotiate in good faith in impact negotiations with these two bargaining units.
In what good faith, Charlie? The good faith that says anything before that is not allowed to go out? Is that good faith? Your union, the unions put that out there. I'm sorry, it's a personal opinion, but once that's out there, they are not bargaining in good faith. Why it went out, I don't know. I can only tell you that from the board's point of view, I was not allowed access to it, period. I accepted that. I said, legal has told us that. Legal has put it out there that we are not going to release this until a decision has been made. Will not release, must not release. I'm confused. Somebody explain this to me.
You're not the only one.
There's no good faith out there. If it were me, probably you folks might want to be happy that I'm not on the board. That MOA would come right off the table. You guys would make the rules and you decide what you're going to do.
That, everybody's entitled to their opinion, Mary. I mean, I take a different approach. The request has been made, and it's our job to consider the request and consider what we need to do in the best interest of the students, the teachers, the parents, everybody involved, and we will negotiate in good faith and what makes sense or reasonable good sense to us. And that's how impact negotiation goes.
How can you negotiate in good faith when your good faith has already been violated? I don't know.
That's a matter
unions.
of
I'm sorry.
opinion. I don't share the same opinion because whether it became public or not, that's not going to affect my decision making.
So having read it in the short amount of time I had from the time it hit the World Wide Web, one of the things that it referenced was that this MOA was it's all about safety. One of the items that's come up is if I have to take temperatures, I want $5 an hour more. How is that related to safety? Are you going to be safer if you get more money in your paycheck that week? I'm just very frustrated
Mary,
by this whole process.
Right. I'm not going to comment and discuss any parts of that.
Okay. Well, at any rate, my original intention was that one of the items in their list of requests spoke directly to the need or not the need of
Right.
plastic barriers. So I think if that could be taken off the
When we
table.
sit down with these bargaining units, we'll have that discussion based upon what we propose, if different or agree. That will happen at the appropriate time
Ellen,
and
there's
place.
somebody that's coming in on a phone, needs to mute, it's blocking out anybody hearing you.
Whoever's on the phone that ends in 46, let me see if I can mute. Thank you.
Tim, you had something?
I did. I just want to comment that as far as commenting on the MAU, we're put into a bad spot. The last meeting, I made a motion to overrule the decision released. The board made a vote no. We live and die by our decisions. If the union released it, potentially, the district could file an unfair labor practice under the reasoning given to our attorney. Is it worth doing that? Probably not. But we're in a bad situation because even though it's out in the public, we still can't comment on it and negotiate in good faith based on the advice given to us by counsel. So I got a lot I'd love to say about that, but I can't.
Mr. King,
Go ahead, Joel.
do we know if the membership voted to release, I mean, we know who released it because it's on social media. Did the membership vote unanimously or majority to release that document? Do we know that?
I have no idea.
I do not know that.
My apologies, I didn't mean to get you off task.
Misty, do we have anyone else chime in at this
There are
point?
not questions, but there are comments. Do you want me to read the comments?
If you feel they're appropriate to be read into the record and on the air.
I think they're appropriate.
Okay.
Should I say the name of the person, if they were at a board meeting?
Yes, go ahead. I think that makes
Okay.
sense. Because their names are with the quote. or with-
Okay.
Yes, there are.
Yeah, go ahead.
So Erica Dickey said thank you to Josh Whitehouse for suggesting full opening. Jimmy Bork, I hope I did not mess up that name, sorry if I did. In my opinion, it would be best to stick with the plan that we voted on earlier in the month. A lot of parents have already adjusted their schedules for remote learning, and changing the plan would cause havoc in the community. Another comment by Erica is both parents who need to work and can't stay home, it's wreaking havoc on them. I work at different school and can't stay home with my kids, neither can my husband, so what about those families? Those were the two comments in there right now.
Okay, thank you. Getting back to the board's discussion on this reopening plan. I know this is basically a plan and there's a bunch of decisions that have to come after this. We have to come to a consensus regarding this proposed plan that we've gone through for quite a few weeks. I mean, I think everyone could take an opinion of saying that this is not 100% the way I want it, but I mean, it's up to Ruth Ellen and staff to make this successful. We need to support them as best we can, but Tim, you had something? Or no?
I do, and I'll put it in the form of a motion, and we can bring it up for discussion. We made a decision on the 5th to come back remote for the first 6 weeks. I'd like to motion that we reconsider that, and we come back in person with restrictions and allow parents that have safety concerns to remote into the building. So we have a dual purpose back to school with the option for parents to remote. And we're taking the decision off of this board and we're putting it where it belongs, on the parents. As a parent, I think I'm capable of making a decision on what's in the best interest of my child. And yeah, there are public comments out there that people have made decisions and plans, but there's also public comment out there on what is the plan, because I've got a deadline for this weekend that I have to talk to my employer. So that's my motion, and we can put it up for discussion.
So do we have a second for discussion?
Second.
Second by Josh. Discussion.
What was the motion?
The motion.
Your motion.
State it
Motion
again.
is to come back full school with restrictions and allow parents that don't feel safe with that plan to remote in.
Did you hear all that, Stan?
I did.
Okay, just want to make sure. My discussion is, I certainly understand your opinion. But as I said earlier, I'm going to stick with my original decision of being remote for 6 weeks, because I feel that's a better decision at this point. If we had the same infection rate 4 weeks ago, or 2 weeks ago, I would be voting for a full reopen. But at that point, we weren't at 0 infections for 2 weeks, and that's why I made the decision that I made, and I'm going to stick with that because we progressed along that plan. A lot of people have made plans for that, and yes, there's some people that still have some plans that they have to make, but I feel comfortable with the decision that we made and sticking with it. That's my discussion. Joel?
I have a comment.
Go ahead, Stan.
The comment is that we're talking about two different things. We're supposed to be talking about the plan and approving the plan. The plan contains 5 different options. We've already chosen an option before we approve the plan. All right, that's fine. Now you want to change the option before we approve the plan. I suggest we work on the plan first and then talk about the option and which one we're going to use within that plan, because the plan contains all 5. My second point is that I understand that Farmington has no cases, but I also understand that it's because nobody's meeting. And every school that I know of that has gone back in session early has had to close within a few weeks because they had outbreaks. And there's a reason for that. Because when you gather people together, they start exchanging air and breath and disease if they happen to have it. Whether it's COVID, or whether it's the flu, or whether it's a cold, or whether it's measles, it doesn't matter. When you put them together, you have an incubator. And we have no control over where the parents or the kids or anybody in the school, any of the teachers or any of the teachers' families or anything that is in close contact with anybody in that school system does and goes after school or on the weekend. We have no control over that. So if we go back and bring people at risk, we're going to be bringing them at risk because we have no control over where they've been or where they're coming from or who they've been in contact with. All we can control is our own school, and I will always vote for the safety of our children first. So we've decided to go remote for a reason, and we should stick to that plan so that we can keep our children safe. Maybe they'll get a lesser education by going remotely, and maybe they won't. We don't know that for sure. But I know damn well that if we bring them all together, they have a higher risk of catching something than if we don't. End of comment. Thank you.
Joel, your thoughts on this motion?
I'd like to ask a question of Mr. Brown since he made the motion. Tim, why was your motion full with restriction as opposed to the hybrid option, which was originally proposed by the task force? I'm just curious.
I think the hybrid with the 2 days in, 2 days out, from our demographics in town, I think is going to cause problems with the parents. And my biggest thing, Joel, is, and my first vote that I made was, we're not ready for in-person, but we're also not ready for remote. So what is our option? And I think our parents who have ownership of our schools are capable of making that decision. I hear what Stan's saying, but I also know since May, my wife's business reopened. She's got a lot of employees. She's got thousands of people that go in there during the day. None of the employees caught COVID because they wear masks. State liquor store, I don't think they've had one case statewide with employees. My son works at a retail establishment, hasn't had one case. And these are the people that are out there in the community. Now, I get safety, and I get the masks, and I get the shields if we can get them in. But we're more ready for remote with restriction right now than we are for remote, and we're going to fail our kids. And as a parent and as a school board member that was elected to tell the public that we're going to try to provide the best education system we can, that's what I'm trying to do here, Joel. We're not ready for remote.
Well, I think we do need to be ready, and I think we will be ready. We have to.
And I want to win megabucks.
Well, we got a lot better chance than you win the megabucks.
No, I'm not sure.
Any other discussion on the motion? Not hearing any. All those in favor?
Wait a minute, I have one more comment.
Go ahead.
Sorry. I guess, I'm just trying to debate this a little bit. I guess, Tim, one of the things that I'm hearing you say is you don't feel we're really fully ready for either option. Then why wouldn't the hybrid make more sense, since it's a combination of the two, but not fully in or fully remote?
My concern with that, Joel, is, and you've lived in town all your life, you know the demographics of town. Part of a good portion of our student population are single parents with children in the school system. They need to work. And I'm okay with, if safety stops our kids from coming in the building, I'm okay with saying they're not coming in the building. I'm okay to say protect the kids that need the safety. But we're not at that point now. So if we can get kids in the building safely, with barriers, with masks, with 0 cases in the community, 0 cases around us, which has changed since we made the vote, why not let the parents make the decision? And the hybrid is going to be more of an economic issue, where if I'm working days and I've got a child in elementary school, I can't go to work. But at the same time, if we try to balance it, do a remote situation for the families that don't feel safe, and have our children that the parents do feel safe coming in the building, let them in.
I'm going to comment on that, Joel, because I think the hybrid plan contains, the more I roll around in my head, contains basically the worst of both plans. And the worst of being, it has a high concentration of kids in the school, just at different times. So if we were concerned about infections, I think that's ends up being pretty close to full in, as far as potential exposure and people getting sick. And it has the most upheaval for parents and students, where it's not a set schedule. It's different every day of the week. And it's different for staff, it's different for people. So that's why I say it logistically, it's, I think, the most problematic. It has not 50% of the exposure rate as a full reopening. It has a lot closer to maybe 75%. I don't know. But it's not half the risk, the way I look at it. And it's the most confusing for parents, students, and teachers to deal with, because it's juggling a lot to reduce the numbers in the school. And to me, it's kind of like, it's either safe enough to come back or it's not. If it's not safe enough, we should have a plan. And, you know, Stan may be right. I haven't looked at the data. I mean, some of the schools have been reopening now. And what if schools in New Hampshire have been open or are opening, and in that first 4 weeks, we may see, well, okay, they reopened and some have closed because due to infection rates in our areas, and we don't have to look at other states and scenarios. Doesn't apply to us. But after that 4 weeks, we will see some other examples that we will feel more comfortable or less comfortable with going with a full in 6 weeks. But the hybrid model, I think, is just, I think logistically it's the toughest to pull off. But getting back to this motion, any discussion, any additional discussion? Not hearing any, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye.
No.
Motion fails. I guess if we look at the plan that's before us, does anybody have any discussion on the content? Because if we were to say if somebody were to make the next motion to accept this with would you have any member have any discussion to the proposed plan? So at this rate, if we're going in for remote for 6 weeks, and we look at that section, which is the one before us, does anyone have any discussion or questions regarding what that looks like? Because 3 weeks from now, we could change this plan if we didn't like something in a subsequent option that we were considering. Like in 4 weeks, we could say, well, we're looking to go all the way in, and in this proposed plan, we now have these concerns. So I don't feel we need to beat those out tonight, but mostly the ones with the full remote for the next 6 weeks. I mean, the one thing I brought up was the 5 days per week, live instruction. We were saying that's what's gonna happen.
If you look at pages 27 through 31, they give you daily schedules.
27?
So what meeting is that information? Because I'm in tonight's meeting and the only thing I have is an agenda.
It's in last week.
Actually, it's in Mondays, the 17th.
17. Starting at what page, was that on?
27.
$27. Okay, well, I'm getting that.
So for the high school, there would be essentially 2 academic blocks a day, and those would be rotating. So it'd be blocks A and B on Monday, D and C on Tuesday. Wednesday would be the rotating day, so the first week it would be AB, the second week it would be DC, so that over the 2 weeks, each class will meet the 5 times.
Go ahead, Tim.
When we're back in school, what time does school start?
Roughly 7:45 or 7:50.
Under remote, what time will school start?
For students, it would start at 9. For elementary students, it would start at 8.
Are you sure? 8 or 8:30? Oh,
8 o'clock.
okay.
So at the end of the...
Say that again, so high school's gonna be 9 o'clock,
Right.
elementary's gonna be 8.
Middle school would be 9. Valley View would be 8.
Can I ask a question for the difference?
Partly because of the way that the UAs are worked in for
UAs being,
art, music, PE,
okay,
because those for the lower grades are where the teachers' prep periods fall in. So you end up with one on while the other is off, and they switch back and forth. So the time is spaced out a little bit differently for Valley View than it is for the high school and the middle school. Their blocks are longer for the older students.
okay. Tim?
So we have a later start time in remote. Under normal school business, what time do we end our day?
Roughly 2:30,
And what time are we going to end our day under remote?
1:30.
So we're shorting the education of our students by going full remote in the morning and the afternoon.
That's as far as the direct instruction for the scheduled classes. It doesn't mean that students wouldn't still be able to access teachers nor instruction. But as you yourselves have said, not everyone needs the same thing at the same time. And that way those who are able to move ahead and work independently would then be able to do so during those times.
So, what is our plan, so if we start with this, how are you going to, with the building supervisors, monitor this and ensure that we're getting a satisfactory result? I mean, we were slated, we were gonna go in 6 weeks into this mode. We've asked the question regarding what's gonna be the turnaround time for when a child has help and it was relayed to us that it's going to be 1 to 2 days, depending on how that comes down.
It takes that long.
So how is, from a management perspective, how are you going to manage that this is working? How are you planning to do that? So that when we get forward, say we get week 1 or we get week 2,
We know where things are. In the regular classroom, a regular school day, administrators are popping in and out of classes. They get a feel for what's happening in the classroom. They're also able to monitor what's happening on Power School. They can look at grades, those sorts of
Right.
things. Same thing here in Google Classroom. Administrators are able to access the classes. They're able to pop in and out, get a feel of what's happening, what's going on. I can be in classes, Diana can be in classes, Misty can monitor. Principals are in and out. They're able to see what's happening. We're also able to see what's happening in Power School. Where are students' grades going? We see the watch lists. We have kids that we're looking at to make sure that they are able to be successful. And we are already we're starting to extend invitations to those that we have identified need to be in the building to start with. And whether that's 5 days, whether it's we've identified that this student is struggling in this area. So this is the area that we're going to bring that student in for. Maybe the student needs help with executive functioning, with getting organized and staying on task. It may mean that that student is working one-on-one with a para. It may mean that that student is in a classroom receiving help from someone who is floating while teaching is going on, which is more what would happen during a regular classroom. It might mean that there are additional sessions that are set aside for that student during the time after 1:30 or before 9 o'clock, that that student can come in and get some one-to-one help, or is part of a small group in person while the teacher is working with other students remotely.
go ahead, Tim.
So what's the magic number with the 6-week time period? Why do we have to do this for 6 weeks?
Because that is what we originally motioned to, and notified all the teachers and the parents and the students that we were going to do. Could we change it? Yes. I'm not ready to change it myself, but. Now, is it possible, Ruth Ellen, because this is a big concern. I mean, Tim's, I know he's trying to tap around it, but it basically has concerns that are we going to be successful at this? So, and I share some of the same concerns as sure as everybody. So for me, as being on this board to ensure that we're successful, is it reasonable for us to request a weekly report on what's going on from the building supervisors, what are the issues and how have they dealt with them? So that we see the steps that are being taken to ensure that this plan is being successful. I mean, we're going to get feedback, I'm sure, from
Certainly we're gonna
public.
get feedback, yeah.
So if we were furnished a weekly report, I'm not looking for, as far as these are the issues and these are how they're addressed and these are the changes that we're making based upon these issues. And
So are you looking at that for Friday afternoon so that you have it for a Monday meeting? And are you
I think that
are you
would,
planning to meet weekly during the first 6 weeks?
we haven't discussed it, but that may be necessary. I think we need a meeting Monday, and based upon what's before us, I don't want to overwork the board, but there's a lot of details that we got to stay on top of as the board, and this is the biggest one. This us being successful with whatever we have for an approach of opening, this board, it's our job to stay on top of, make sure that we're being successful, and you guys have been successful.
I'd make that a motion, Mr. King,
What's the motion then, Joe?
to meet weekly and get weekly reports on reopening.
I'll second that. Any discussion on that?
I would just suggest that the week of Labor Day that we go Tuesday, obviously, instead of Monday.
Well, and that Tuesday is voting day. We don't actually start school until Wednesday. So,
Oh, voting day,
so you may want to.
Well, we can
don't
work out the details.
Start school until Wednesday,
Yeah.
so do you want to start those meetings the following Monday so we have some data for you?
I don't. I want to start weekly right away.
Yeah, I think we'll just work around the holidays and the voting, Joel. I agree with you. And if we miss a week because of that, that's okay. But I think we got to meet weekly until further notice to make sure that we're accomplishing our goals.
So
And
I just wanted to clarify, because if you're going to meet weekly, that would be probably the Wednesday of that week.
yeah,
We would have opened that day. I don't know how much we'll be able to report for
right.
you that night.
And that may be the one meeting where we don't have for the
Okay.
week. But we can work out the logistics of that. So, because right now we got a motion on the floor. Stan and Josh, any discussion on the motion?
I don't want to report, I don't think I need one, but I don't want to meet weekly. I don't want to meet weekly. I think that I don't want to put too much pressure on the teachers. I want them to do their job, and I don't want to micromanage.
Josh?
I'm more than willing to meet weekly, and I would appreciate weekly reports. And is it the intent of the board to still reopen on the week of the 24th?
On the week of the 24th,
No, I think teachers are in the 31st.
teachers report the 31st, the
and students
students'
the
first
9th.
day is the 9th.
I mean, a full reopening.
You
Has that
lost me.
been taken off the table at this point?
Yes. That was voted down. So right now,
And I'm not sure where the week of the 24th came in.
It's a-
It was the 6-week mark after the...
6 weeks? Well, at the 4 week mark, we're gonna have discussion on what's gonna happen at that 6 weeks mark. That's what we had told everybody, and until the vote changes that direction by a motion, that's what we're doing.
So that would be discussed at October 5th meeting.
October 5th meeting, we'd have that discussion on our next step, or considering a change, if any. Tim, is this a discussion on the motion?
All right, I'll pass on the motion. I'll bring it up after.
Can the public make comment on this motion as well?
Do we have public that wants to comment?
Actually, I think there's a... Misty, what have you got?
There's a lot of comments in the chat. I don't know if you want me to read them all. They've been coming in as you've been chatting, so...
The
No.
comments are not about this particular motion, though.
No, they are
Okay,
not.
so if it's not relevant to this motion, then we will wait till a different time.
I see 3 that are.
And Matt Castangre is asking to comment, however.
Yes, go ahead, Matt.
Go ahead, Matt.
He left the meeting.
Oh, okay.
Okay, then maybe that was his comment.
Can I, can I ask for clarification? So would your first weekly meeting be on the 14th of September? That's the Monday after school starts.
My motion was to start them immediately.
Right, that's the motion.
My motion is to start this coming Monday.
Yep.
Okay, but I'm just trying to figure out what we're doing
that-
with the holiday week.
We'll figure that out later, Ruth Ellen.
Okay.
I'll set the agenda based upon what makes sense, and if we'll poll the board at that time.
Okay.
Any other discussion on the motion? Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Stands opposed. So motion passes. We're going to be weekly, and we're going to get weekly reports from administrators on the issues, the adaptations, concerns, or successes. I mean, I think
So for
it,
this week, shall I report out on our meeting tomorrow? Or are we waiting for that to when school starts? I'm not trying to be fresh, I just want to make sure that I know what your report expectations are.
Well, I mean, if I may, Mr. King.
go ahead.
Ms. Vaughn, you commented earlier that you were going to start working on some things first thing in the morning, making some phone calls, plexiglass, all that. I think that needs to be reported on Monday night. That's one of the things.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
but that's not the building administrators, that's me.
But if they don't have anything to report yet, then we don't need a report.
Okay.
I mean, if they have staff coming in for between the 31st and the 9th, there's things that are going on that we want to know about.
Fair enough.
Issues, staffing issues, whether it's building issues, whether it's janitorial issues, whether it's people trying to get access to the building that shouldn't be trying to get access to, whatever they are. So we can make sure that we deal with, well, if we need to deal with it as quickly as possible, and to make sure that it's going the direction it needs to go. So,
And if I were to the next board, I would be said that just put it in writing, there's nothing to report.
yeah.
The principal at the middle school would like to comment.
Yeah,
Mr.
go
Conway is in now, so if you'd like to recognize him.
ahead.
Yeah, he is trying to comment, yep.
Go ahead, please.
Thank you. I just wanted to just make mention of some of what has been discussed this evening, and I do want members of the public to know that the administrators have been working extremely hard this summer in preparation for the new school year. And your administrators have not taken vacations, have not taken time off. And I just want the community to know that we are dedicated and committed to having a positive and successful reopening of our schools, no matter which scenario we are with. And since the board did vote for opening remotely back in early August, we have been spending 7 days a week preparing for that. And I am actually very excited to hear the motion that was just passed, because for me, I'll be happy and thrilled to report all of the successes and the positive changes that we have made since the spring to make sure that our students are getting education during this tough time, that our teachers are working hard, and I'm just really excited to talk about that in my report, but also that we will show as a Henry Wilson family and as a Farmington family that we are committed to the students of this town, we're committed to the families of this town, and that we will make remote learning successful at least for the first 6 weeks of the school year.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Tim?
Going back to my question on the hours of remote learning and the later start and the early ending, what's wrong with going Monday through Thursday, the same hours that we went through school? Friday's an assignment and project day for the kids, and that'll leave hours for staff, 2 set office hours, and it'll leave time for the superintendent that if she sees problems within those Fridays, she can schedule professional development time.
I actually think that, well, one concern I would have is if you have a 4-day waiting period and you have a student or a parent that needs to get a hold of a teacher, that could restrict that. Because right now we have staff time or time before and after that instruction period for individual help, whether it's with the parent or student or discussion. And if you, in that model, that would be limited and would have to be playing catch-up at the end of the week. That would be my concern.
I've never had a parental concern that I haven't been able to reach a teacher or a member of staff by email and not have a response within 24 hours. Never happened.
Good.
So,
Mr. Castongway, can you mute, please? Thank you.
so, my feeling is we're shorting the kids' hours of education to deal with the what-ifs.
Ms. Allen? Would you like to respond?
I feel like we've addressed this, and I don't want to just keep circling the same argument. It's not about seat time, it's about the quality of the time, and remote is different. And I understand that Mr. Brown has respectfully disagreed with that opinion. What we have from the state says remote learning shouldn't be full-day expectation. It's different.
How many other communities are taking this similar approach when they're in their remote learning? Majority, some of them?
This is a fairly common type of schedule. I mean, it's not every minute down to, There was one school that had proposed, I think, an hour a day. The commissioner did say that that was too light. But he's taken a look at schedules that are very similar to these and said, this is what we're looking at. It's not about the time, it's about the quality of what's presented during that time.
Tim?
Spent a couple of hours today going through the state reopening guidelines. Can you point me to the page where it says that in the guidelines as far as the...
It's not in those guidelines. There was another document that was released, I believe it was May 5th or 4th, and I will pull that.
Does the board have that document?
I believe I had sent it to you back in May, but I will double check.
Okay.
And it is on the state website.
Mr. King, can I make a comment based
ahead.
on Mr. Brown's questioning?
Go ahead, Matt.
Just so you all know, we did, as you possibly know, we did conduct various surveys towards the end of last school year into the summer. And we did resoundly hear from our students' parents, at least for Henry Wilson, that an 8 o'clock start time in the remote world was too early, that they had a lot of difficulty getting their children out of bed and motivated to be up and ready for an 8 o'clock class. So that was a huge piece to our decision in starting at 9 a.m. And then also there were lots of comments as far as Friday being kind of an off day or catch-up day or meeting day or whatnot, that would just make it a 3-day weekend. So that was just some of the data that we had that helped us make the decisions that we did make.
Tim?
Matt, on your data points, what's the student population of Henry Wilson?
Student population as far as what?
How many kids do you have in your school?
Approximately 300.
And how many responses to the survey did you get?
That original survey, we had approximately, I'd have to look back, but it was definitely more than half of our families who did respond.
So we're making decisions on data points from 50% of the community. I think we're doing a good job.
It was definitely more than 50%, but as you know, with getting surveys, generally the majority of the time, whatever percent of respondents that we have, we can make those connections to plenty of other people feeling that same way as well. And that's kind of one piece to our thinking process. But then also Giselle, Mrs. Pomeroy, our assistant principal, and myself meeting with teachers weekly throughout March through the end of the school year. That was a big topic that always came up, was that 8 o'clock start and students not showing up to class, not being prepared to learn. So we decided that may be a bit too early for our student population, and having a school start time at 9 a.m. and then an end time at 1:30 would hopefully accommodate for the morning concerns, and then also alleviate from our students having to be online, live, and in front of a screen for the entirety of a school day from 7:50 to 2:35.
All set for a second?
Do I want to what?
I said, are you all set for a second? So Ruth Allen, on page 7, this has to be, talks about the models. And model 1 is a fully remote model, which is we're we're starting with?
Actually, we're starting with 2.
Oh, hold on now. I'm in the wrong section. Let me look.
No, on page 7.
Oh,
We're starting remote with small groups in.
so does, in this plan, in this model, do we stipulate where the teacher's workplace is? Is it defined in here? It is defined in the previous section. Is it defined in this section?
It is defined. Let's see. as we are discussing on-campus learning, no, that's not good. There is at least one section, and I need to go back and look at the exact page, that does say the expectation is that teachers will be on campus. Yes, Model 2, page 8. Instructional staff and related service providers are expected on campus unless accommodations are granted.
Okay, good.
I'll make a motion that those accommodations are approved by the board.
I agree with that.
My question would be accommodations that are in this bucket would receive this accommodation, or are you asking for individual information?
I don't think we need to have that as part of that. It just need to be approved by the board. How that happens, it can be at a later point, because I know where you're going with the discussion, and we don't need to hash that out right now.
Okay.
I think that those, because there's a lot of reasons why that's a long discussion. Or it could be short discussion, but it's just gonna drag us down. And where was,
So is a motion from Tim?
could you restate your motion, Tim? I good.
Motion is to have any reasonable accommodation requests approved by the board.
I'll second for discussion. Any discussion on the motion?
Would this mean all exception requests go to the board,
Yes,
every and all?
every and all.
Well, I guess so what he's saying is every and all, so do I need to bring each individual to you, or are there?
Yeah, I think your question is, they're all gonna come to us, Josh,
Yes.
whether they're in groups or individuals, but they're all coming to us. Okay, because they may be grouped depending on what they are.
Yes.
Okay,
That was the intent of my motion.
right.
Okay.
Any other questions or discussion on the motion? Not hearing any, all in favor?
Aye. Aye.
No.
It stands a no. I'll make a motion to amend this plan that states formal live instruction at all levels, 5 days a week, instead of 4 as listed. I know Ruth Ellen had made that mention, but I'll make that motion.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? This is basically just to change a document to what Ruth Ellen has stated, which will be formal live instruction for students who are learning remotely for 5 days per week. Any discussion? Not hearing any, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Tim?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we review the hours of remote class at the second week interval to see if we need to continue as we're going or if we need any changes. In other words, during these hours that we cut compared to a regular school day and remote learning, what are those hours being used for? Are they being effective? Are we not getting parental involvement? Are we not doing professional development during that? Do we need to increase our delivery of instruction versus leaving those hours open? And I think we can get a good idea on that, or at least discuss it at week 2.
After week 2.
After week 2.
I'll second that motion for discussion. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
No.
Stands opposed. Misty, is there any other discussion from the general public regarding this plan that you would think would be appropriate as far as public comment?
There's no questions. There's lots of comments. I will say this, I think that you probably haven't, I can't answer this right now, but there are several teachers in here that are Still trying to understand whether if it's fully remote, if they have to come into the building or not, but I believe that is going to be decided once you decide on the plan, correct?
I think we just did.
Um,
I thought we determined that the teachers were going to be in the classroom,
yes.
in the plan.
And if they're not,
Okay.
right. And if they have a medical concern or an issue, that's going to be dealt with on a case-by-case basis and approved by the board, whether it's in groups based upon the request, which may be a medical one or whatever. The board will be convening on those separately.
Okay. I think that all the other comments, I'm thinking you may want to go through and read them in the transcript, but I'm not sure it'd be it's a good idea of time for me to read them all at this point.
Okay. So at this point, I'll make a motion to approve the plan that's the amended plan and direct staff to implement it. Second by Stan. I mean, in that plan, we have some requirements that we've changed. We have a review period at 2 weeks for the hours. We have a review at 4 weeks regarding the continuation of going remote or going full in or partial. We certainly still have some things to work on to get ready. But accepting this and moving to the next step, which is to get it implemented, is, I think, where we need to be. So that's why I made the motion. Discussion. Tim?
Part of the DOE plan is a communication plan and how we're going to address with the public if we have an outbreak, who's going to be authorized to release information to the parents. I don't see that in our reopening plan. What's the plan on that?
It is in here,
Okay, can you point me to it?
page 14. And actually 15 is communication. And part of this is also covered under if someone tests positive. I will be the point of contact between local emergency personnel and DHHS. I will have a deputy who is named in the if a student or a staff member tests positive, students with the cohort of students with whom they've interacted will be asked to quarantine. For the purpose of the quarantine, students, that will also include the students on the bus where the student rides. But DHHS is the one who makes the determination. A positive case, if I get a report from a parent, and we certainly do encourage parents to communicate with us, if I get a report, I need to have that confirmed through DHHS before I can then in turn inform the community. I have a very specific script that I am allowed to release in giving information. I will not be giving names. I will not be giving positions other than student or staff member. But I will. And
Would it
then
also be parent?
What?
Wouldn't it also be parent?
I wouldn't be announcing if a parent has
Or
tested
family
positive.
member or?
That, because that's a second degree relationship
Okay.
to those in the building. And that's if DHHS instructs me that I am then sharing information with them for contact tracing. The general contact tracing will come through DHHS. That's not something that we do, but it is something that we assist with. And then I will put out a general statement to the community in regards to where we stand. But I am not allowed to release information until it's confirmed.
We're aware of that. Go ahead.
So, within this plan, shouldn't the notification procedure that's identified in the state reopening plan with DHHS and the phone numbers be in here, and shouldn't we name the superintendent as the primary, and in her absence, who you designate to perform that function? Because otherwise, it's open-ended in our policy.
Okay. I will make that change.
I agree with that. Because it's really just notating what's actually supposed to happen. The other thought that crossed my mind is if in your reporting to us on a weekly basis, because you're in direct communication with our emergency management director. So if you could, for the record, in that weekly basis, give us any report of not only a student or a teacher, but if there's any infections noted in the past week in the community, because you would have that information. Some members like me may go to the town, the state website, assuming it's 100% accurate, but you could let us know if there was a reported case on a weekly basis, so we could use that, at least be abreast for
To
when we
know
get to
what you
those
do.
periods where we're going to make a potential transition.
Yes, certainly.
Yes, just the reporting, so it gives additional information for people who may not have an opportunity to go to the state website. And
And it doesn't always match. You're
I don't know
correct.
if hopefully it always matches, but,
Sometimes one lags behind the other.
right. That's a little separate of this policy. Anything else regarding the policy? Not hearing it. All those in favor of approving as amended? Aye.
I'm going to abstain.
One abstention. Joel and Josh? No. Josh? Joel?
Sorry, I had to step away from the computer. Can you repeat the motion?
The motion was to approve as amended, which is we made an amendment for 5 days a week, live instruction, and so.
Aye.
Aye. So motion passes. 3 yeses, 1 no, 1 abstention.
Ms. Allen?
Yes.
Just one question somebody asked that I think we could answer right away. Can these comments that are being put, since we're recording and they will actually be saved as a PDF, someone asked, can they be added to the board minutes, just because there are links being put in here that can be super helpful, I think, so I just wondered if that would be okay to do.
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion for that content to be added to the record.
Chat to be added to.
Is there a second? I'll second. Any discussion? Not hearing any, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So the content of the chat will be added to our minutes.
And I did put that document, Tim, into the board folder for tonight. Thank you, Stan, for finding the link faster than I did.
Sure thing.
So at this point, this was the only thing on our agenda. And I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to
Well, isn't-
discuss, but
Isn't sports, and don't we have deadlines to talk about sports, part of the reopening
Sports.
plan?
Sports you had tabled until the 31st.
So,
that's not next meeting, it's the meeting after.
so my other question is, how do we address, there's more to sports, there's clubs, National Honor Society. I heard today that driver's ed wasn't going to happen. Is that something
We
new,
don't have a
or-
driver's ed instructor.
Okay, so that's not something we'd look to contract out, or is it normally contracted out?
It
or-
is typically contracted out. We can try again. The last few times we've put it out, we've had exactly one person who bid on it, and that person has since resigned. So
Well-
we can certainly bid again,
Why wouldn't we bid?
because we've not had any interest at all. But we did not last spring. We'll try it again.
So, how do we deal with, during our remote person, National Honor Society children? How do we deal with band? How do we deal with student council? How do we deal with the accreditation committee? There's more than remote learning and sports in our educational system. And I think we need to, as part of our plan, address everything.
I would say certainly those pieces that can be done remotely while we're in remote. It's National Honor Society, there's no reason why they couldn't do a meeting. There are some things that are harder to do without being in person.
So I guess for the next meeting, to start this discussion of all those extracurricular activities, which ones are going to be able to function remote, and which ones are we going to have to provide facility space for, and how we plan to work around that, or deal with that. That's your question and concern?
Yeah, I mean, are we gonna have them, or are we not gonna have them?
Because some some would be in here, and we're going to need to have a plan, whether it's cleaning protocol, or staff, whatever we're going to deal with it, how we're going to deal with it.
Well, if we are remote for the first 6 weeks, are you then saying that those are open on campus, or are they waiting 6 weeks? I guess that's my question.
I'm asking a question. Which ones are continuing, and how are they continuing? Because you could come back to me and say, this one really needs to be done here, because, and this one, none of them do. So, how are we managing all those? Sports are gonna be back to us on the 31st, I guess.
So you'd like clubs on Monday?
Yeah.
Okay.
And, well, we've got a laundry list of stuff. Tim, go ahead.
I guess my other concern going into is, and he's here tonight, is Larry. His people have worked hard. Schools have been phenomenal. What does he need for resources? And are we going to be here in 6 weeks saying, can't reopen because we don't have enough janitors? Do we have to hire people? We batted it around. What's our needs to open this facility?
I do have a nomination form that we can either take now or Monday.
We don't have a lot of applicants. So, that being said, who have we reached out for temporary staffing, trying to get some more resources lined up? I feel your pain as far as finding people applying for a job. They're currently making more sitting at home. And it sounds like that's going to continue a little bit longer. So how are we addressing this? I mean, I think this needs to be before us at the next meeting, and it may be for other staff needs also, because if we have some teachers that aren't able to come back, how are we going to backfill those resources, whether it's teaching? We've been talking about drivers, janitorial staff, whatever we need to discuss. We need to be as proactive as we can to try to get some more resources at least available. We may not need them. Hopefully we don't need them. But in the case of janitorial services, I share Tim's concern. And because if we come back here on the 31st and we consider opening our facility to some or all of our sports, we're going to need a plan.
Absolutely.
And that's going to potentially, the answer may be we can't pull it off, or the answer is we could pull it off if we do it on these certain days, and like Fridays only, so we got time for the staff to clean the building on a Saturday, on overtime, or outside people. These are scenarios that we'll hope that one's on the 31st, but.
Okay, so my question, if we're looking at discussing general staffing needs on Monday, we had looked at the bus comparison being for the 31st. Do you want me to push that up? I do have some information.
I don't think that's necessary. I think it's, these are the areas that we're, feel that we're going to need to get some other resources, and these are the ways that we're going to approach getting those resources.
Okay.
That's, an outline plan. It doesn't necessarily say this is what we've done so far. These are the things, or these are the people we've contacted. These are our potential avenues to get resources for janitorial or teaching or bus driving. And the board's saying, okay, and then we might also say, hey, what about this one? This one might be one you didn't think of, so that we can get proactively filling any positions we need or getting additional staff. Tim?
Go ahead, Egus.
Go ahead, Joel.
Mr. King, could we also, just for the agenda on Monday, when we discuss the report, Ms. Vaughn, can we have a conversation, at least start a conversation on Monday about vocational and what you've heard and what you know about potential reopening of those opportunities?
Yes, I can.
Thank you.
as long as the chair puts it on there.
Well, that's why I asked through him.
Yeah. I realized that I said yes and
I'm trying
right
to
over
burn
him,
that into my
so
brain, Joel.
I wrote it down.
And you had a question from a parent in there that was asking about vocational programs too, so.
Okay.
I
Tim?
think the other thing we need to look at, and it's going back to Larry's, is full remote. We need to evaluate our staffing. We need to look at our contracts. Any contracts that we have potential layoffs on, we need to make those appropriate notifications. And we may have to open the discussions of, if this position potentially is going to get laid off, do we reallocate that to another function? And I think those are the conversations we need to look at. We need to evaluate our staff at a remote. Do we need the same staff at a remote process that we need full-time? If we do, the answer is simple. If we don't, then we have to identify who potentially we're going to furlough, or what are those positions we're going to reallocate to building functions that we need, such as janitorial.
Agreed. I mean, Monday, I'm going to have to do a better job to getting the content boiled down to the absolute necessary that we have to get done first. And that's on me.
We'll get the agenda set tomorrow.
Anything else for this meeting? I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Any discussion? Except for Mary?
Did we open the last, we told the public that we were going to have public comment. Before we adjourn,
Okay.
can we just make sure that we don't have any public comment
Do we,
out there?
Misty, do we have any public comment? Were people waiting to speak to the board, or any late?
There's comments in here, but nobody's asking to speak to the board.
No, there is
Okay.
a question, during remote, will small groups
Oh, yeah.
still be going in? That's a yes at this point.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, and another question just came in.
Okay, what is that question?
Will we have time during professional development days to meet with our grade level teams to discuss and plan for online learning? I am assuming yes. Principal
Yes,
will.
that is part of the plan,
Starting the 31st.
starting the 31st, yes.
Hey, I was listening.
You were. Gold star.
Getting back to the motion. Any other discussion? Not hearing, all in favor? Aye.
And the question there, accommodations are still, they come through me and I will take them to the board.
And the documentation is going to be in a folder for Monday?
Yes, it will be.
Thank you.